What I love is.
Good. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our August 13th Portsmouth Town Council meeting. We've been on a little bit of a break, so we might be a little rusty, but we'll get right back at it. First item is just in the event of an emergency, there are two doors on your left, another door at the front of council chambers. We would exit the building, cross Middle Road, and await for further instruction at the school administration building. If we could now please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our men and women serving in harm's way. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay. A little more housekeeping. We are live streaming. So those of you that are participating remotely on Zoom, there's an icon to raise your hand. If you're calling in, *6 will allow you to mute and unmute your phone, and *9 will indicate to the host that you have a question. If you're speaking in person tonight or participating remotely, please state your name and address for the town clerk. And with that, we will get going with our roll call.
Mr. Gleason?
Here.
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Mr. Levesque?
Here.
Dr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Aguirre?
Here. Okay, President's executive summary. There were no executive sessions, so I do not have any updates. So I'd like to begin with our consent agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we'll be sitting as the Board of License Commissioners.
Mr. President, I move that the peddler's license for Baby Duck LLC be approved as requested.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn at the Board of License Commissioners.
Seconded.
What, hold on, don't we have? What? All right, I'm looking at,
I've only got one.
no, I get stuff offline. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Switch papers here.
Shake off the rust.
Yeesh.
Mr. President, I move that the minutes be approved as printed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have tax voucher, 2024-0813-01 to 2024-0813-05.
Mr. President, I move that they be approved as requested by the tax collector.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're moving on to our town administrators report.
Good evening, Mr. President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen. A quick road paving update. Patriots Drive and Education Lane curbing and sidewalks have been completed. The rest of our road paving projects for this summer started on July 30th and will continue through the rest of this month. 16 roads will be paved this summer and work will be concentrated in Island Park. Weather delays did impact our schedule, but we will still finish the summer projects this month. Specifically due to last week's weather, there was a delay in paving in Island Park. Our contractor has started installing the top course of asphalt in Island Park and expects to complete it this week, along with Cliff Avenue. They will then move on to Patriots Drive and Education Lane to start installing binder, and their plan is to finish the top course of those two lanes in the week of the 19th. Just for everybody's knowledge, once the rolling of a roadway has been completed, so once the top coat has been installed and it's been rolled, that road is open for traffic. And just like the state, that DPW does appreciate the patience of all our residents and their cooperation in moving off the road during this process. With regard to the Prudence Island Shoreline Protection Project, that project has been completed. We installed 527 feet of emergency shoreline protection from Ida Avenue to just south of Holbrook Avenue. This project reinforced riprap revetment parallel to Narragansett Avenue to protect the shoreline and roadway from erosion and storm damage. With respect to the town's website redesign, that project is still steadily progressing. We have been meeting with the Civic Plus team regularly and have reviewed the website page by page and module by module, and a layout and color scheme has been confirmed. Training and best practices for staff designated with editing and upkeep functions has been provided, and our consultant has met with individual departments over the last few weeks. We have approved a final design concept. We did that on Friday, and our goal is to go live by the end of summer. Some good news, the Portsmouth planning staff is thrilled to be part of the NOAA Climate Resilience Challenge. This is a $2 million grant awarded to the Aquidneck Land Trust, and Paige Myatt, the program director for the NOAA award. The project, called Growing Regional Resilience Coordination on Aquidneck Island, was developed in close collaboration between the Land Trust, Newport, Middletown, Portsmouth, and the Naval Station. This competitive grant is intended to fund the building of capacity, which will be needed to support projects to enhance coastal resilience to extreme weather, sea level rise, and other climate impacts. Aquidneck Island was only one of 19 communities, or one of only 19 communities around the country to receive this funding. The annual Open Summit was held on July 26th at Roger Williams University. Don't worry if you missed it, you can get the training online. And certification forms are also available online and can be turned into the town clerk. With respect to the audit, the fiscal year was closed out last Thursday. Finance has so far submitted about 67% of the required statements to our auditors, and will concentrate on the remaining reports this month in preparation for an auditor site visit in September. And then lastly, with respect to the Enbridge gas pipeline replacement project, the plan remains for the new pipe to be installed via horizontal drilling well beneath the seafloor. So there'll be no, right now, there's intended to be no digging in or near the river itself. For some of the landside sections of the pipeline, a trench will be dug and then filled along the existing right-of-way. and the plan is for construction to be completed this year. The first activity likely to be noticeable outside the right-of-way will be the installation of conductor casing to accommodate the pilot drill for the crossing beneath the riverbed. There'll be one in Little Compton and one here on Portsmouth. That casing installation will likely occur on or around August 16th, and it will last for upwards of 5 days. Heavy equipment will be used, and all abutters in the areas affected have been notified. This work adjacent to the right-of-way will also include the movement of heavy trucks and materials to support the casing installation. While this work is underway, the company will work closely with individual landowners to mitigate the impacts from noise and vibrations when they start installing this casing. More information and an overview about the project can be found on the enbridge.com website, but we also established a link on the town planners webpage. So if you go to the town website, you'll be able to get to that, navigate to that information. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
President,
Rainer.
a
Yes.
couple of things. One, Mr. Administrator, I want to applaud your efforts, but I believe that President Aguirre has the better tan. As you know, I contacted you with regard to a particular constituent complaint with regard to the paving in Island Park, number 1 on the agenda. I want to thank both you and Director Woodward for getting back to him quickly. But I do think that there is, and this is just something for the future, I think we need to have someone other than you and even the director being the one kind of fielding complaints and perhaps even giving out the information in order to make sure people are prepared for certain events. I mentioned it during budget time, some sort of, I know Middletown and Newport both have a liaison with the public, somebody who is basically there to advise the public and advise the department on how to respond to public complaints or perhaps take that responsibility. I also think when you're looking at a website, that's something that somebody could be involved with on a full-time basis to make sure. So that portion of my comments is really just to my council colleagues. If we're still around, I may be bringing that up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levick. Okay. So we will move on to the removals, resignations, and appointments. First item was it's really a resignation on the Park and Rec Committee.
Mr. President, I move that the resignation suggested by Chair Fiorillo of Caitlin Duffy upon her request be approved and without regrets.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have appointments. First one is an appointment for the Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission.
Mr. President, I move approval of actually, could we do these all? Oops, somebody's coming forward. So I will move the approval of the Jenna Heath for the Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission.
Seconded.
I would request that you table the appointment of anybody being appointed to the AIPC for the foreseeable future, as I believe that AIPC is now defunct. I would like to give anybody that wants an opportunity to serve a positive experience. The last person that you appointed to the AIPC quickly resigned from the AIPC. And I believe the whole AIPC submitting in an application should just be simply removed.
All right. I will tell you, I am the liaison, I believe, along with Councilwoman Abbott, I think, yeah, if not.
It was Len Katzman.
What's that?
It was Len Katzman.
Oh, it was last, okay, and that's, everything went downhill after he left. I have received certain information over, but I can't remember the last time. I think that's a very good idea, perhaps to bring it forward. I know some members of the council have had concerns with the AIPC and what it is or is not doing. So perhaps this is a matter that I'll withdraw if the seconder will agree my appointment and nomination and ask that this be put on a future agenda.
After we can investigate whether there's actually an organization to
I mean,
appoint
we
somebody
should only
to.
appoint people to organizations that exist,
True.
I think.
So a motion to table the appointment to the AIPC, and perhaps we can, or you can reach out and see if she wants to join the planning board.
I'd be happy to do that. I want anybody that's willing to serve to have a positive experience on these boards.
Oh, okay, Mr. Johnson, the chair is on the air.
Thank you, Counselor. I would like to see new blood added to the commission. We are not defunct. We may become defunct, but we are not yet that way. We must, if we are going to fade away into the sunset, must do so professionally. And that requires a quorum for board meetings. That requires that we file the appropriate documentation with the state and with the IRS.
Mr. Johnson, may I interrupt you just for a second? So I understand you're probably making a suggestion that you're not defunct and you would like to have an opportunity. So we have contrary opinions as to where we are right now. It seems to me that rather than discuss it right now, we bring it forward, this particular nomination be tabled, and we put this on for some future agenda, Madam Secretary. Perhaps this is the, what, 12th? So it'd be the
13th.
Yeah,
13th.
It's the next
Any-
meeting is
4th, 24th,
26th.
For
26th.
consideration.
26.
Not unusual, Keith. 26th. And we'll have a full discussion and perhaps you could have your members here or whatever to give us an idea of the viability of the planning commission. Okay,
Fair enough.
Thank you for your consideration.
so the motion's table.
We need to vote on that? Yes. All those in favor of
Aye.
for tabling? We had a motion and a second.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Motion to
passes
table.
5-0. Okay. Thank you.
The appointment is tabled.
The
The appointment.
appointment.
The motion is not.
All right, we almost. screwed that
Let's
one up.
move on to the,
Mr. President, I would move that the appointment of Heather Williams to the Portsmouth Economic Development Committee. I don't know if she's here, but this is someone who was the captain of the Portsmouth High School Model United Nations team. She is also the president and grant writer of the Portsmouth High School Green. I like this person. We have to keep our eye and make sure that we have opportunity for her. I would move her appointment.
Second.
What's that?
second.
Oh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And
Mr. President, I would move the appointment of Patricia Cretion to the Portsmouth Housing Authority. I would do a certain amount of reservation as I am the attorney for the authority, and we are also somewhat defunct now, although this council may want to give us roles in the future. But there is a plan afoot actually to transfer ownership of at least the facility over to a private party. But for the time being, I believe there is an opening and I will move Patricia Cretion be appointed to.
Seconded.
thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. President, I would move the appointment of Audrey Grimes to the Tree Commission.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. President, we have the liaison from the dog talk here, but I would just move unless there's any sort of problem, the reappointment of all 4 of the applicants for the dog park.
There's only two.
There's 2.
2 for the
Just-
dog park.
Just Jane and Bonnie.
Yeah, they seem like more because they're so lively.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, it's EDC. reappointment to the EDC.
Move to approve the reappointment of Frank Keller.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And then
And move to
finally,
approve the reappointment of Lori Greeny to the Prudence Island Planning Commission.
Seconded.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, next we're going to move on to old business. There's two parts here under the Bristol Ferry Road Senior Center project. The first item is the questions that were presented on behalf of by Mr. Gleason on behalf of constituent. So it is Mr. Gleason, this is your item. There's questions, but we have both representatives from our planning department as well as from church community that will be able, or Mr. Rayner will be able to provide answers to each of these questions. So.
Thank you. I'd also invite Mary Ellen Martin to ask her questions. She had quite a few before I kind of finished the topic last in July, I guess we were. I would like to start by saying that in my humble opinion, the old business that's listed here is really just the questions. I don't know how we ended up with a ground lease on here. It was a burden to me to be able to try and digest all this legalese. I hope you folks had as much fun reading it and trying to understand it I did. But be that as it may, we'll have some questions on that as well, I'm sure. My questions are fairly straightforward. After reviewing the tape, essentially, I'll start by saying a lot of the reasons I asked these questions were I attended a session that Mr. Belden put on to the seniors. And there were questions asked that as well. And there was, I won't
Mr.
say
President,
any.
could you ask, Mr. Gleason, could you tell us when about these meetings that you referred to, the one at the senior center, the date or approximate date?
I cannot tell
A
you.
year ago, 6 months ago?
No,
End of May.
May,
Okay.
May 20th.
that's good.
Yeah, recent.
Thank you.
No problem. So there was discussion, one of my questions was, is this elderly housing, senior housing, LMI housing? You made a comment on that. The ground lease talks about it being an affordable housing, age-restricted development. So there are different descriptions here. And I imagine in the grand scheme of things, the way Rhode Island works, there are ways of identifying how you can enter these types of facilities, whether it be senior housing or LMI. And that was the area that I wanted to find for the public to understand what exactly this housing project will, who they will exactly be accommodating. That was my first question.
On the list of questions, that isn't the first question. Can I answer the first question?
Well, these questions, the questions on the agenda
Mhm.
are from a constituent.
Okay,
Questions from Mr. Gleason are from June
Well, they're both discussed
9th or
on the
12th.
same
Yeah.
day, but you weren't available for the following meeting.
It's 24.
So, but do you have answers to
Oh.
Mary Ellen's questions, I think?
yeah, very quickly, they just asked.
Could I ask? I don't know that you've identified yourself for the record, and could you step up a little closer to the microphone?
Sure.
Because I am elderly and I have hearing aids.
I'm Christian Belden. I'm the Executive Director of Church Community Housing Corporation, and we are the developer who has been working to develop the Ade Bethune House and New Portsmouth Senior Center project. And the first question relates to how many days per week, how many hours per day will the senior center be open? And it will be the same days and hours that they are open presently, which is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So no change there. The next question, Councilman Gleason, the difference between elderly housing and senior housing is that elderly housing is for persons 62 years of age and older. Senior housing is for persons 55 years of age and older, and low mod income housing is any housing that serves low and moderate income populations. and they can be elderly, seniors, or younger persons. In this instance, we're developing senior affordable housing. And there are a range of incomes that are eligible to live there. So these are persons 55 years of age and older, and the income eligibility ranges, I think there are 6 units at below 50% of median income. The vast majority are at 60% of median income. And then I think there are 6 at 80% of area median income as well. And to give you a sense of what that means, the rents will range from $1,241 per month for a 1-bedroom to $1,723 a month for a 2-bedroom.
Can I just interrupt just to ask a quick question? Now, those definitions that you just gave us, those are not definitions we created. Those are definitions from the state. Is that a fair statement? Or this type of project would have a definition of what is affordable, what is senior, what is?
Yeah, those are just industry standards. And I think to a greater or lesser degree, they're also defined within the state general laws. But I'm not sure what your question is.
Well, I think that there is concern over why we're using particular terms. Okay, who is going to be eligible to come in there? And also, quite frankly, whether or not we can give priority, and I excuse me if but whether we can give priority to Portsmouth residents. And my experience in the past has always suggested is that if you accept state money for a project, there are great limitations on your ability to discriminate on various levels. And I was wondering if you could apprise me if I'm correct about that.
Sure. First, I'd just like to ask Mr. Gleason if I've answered his question adequately.
Yes, yes. And if you could just bear with me, that's part of the question. And I think we're gonna roll right into that, because my next question was, what are the limitations to sign up for an apartment? Are there age restrictions? And the example was, can a 50-year-old of a household sign up and bring kids with them? And basically, at 50 years old, they can't. First
That's right.
off, you have to be 55. We decided that.
Correct.
And it's income driven,
Correct.
income based. And the only thing would be, can you have youngsters with you? If you're 55 and you have a family, are there allowances for a family in the?
Well, the largest bedroom size is a 2-bedroom.
There is no 3 bedrooms, right?
Correct.
It's 2.
So technically, I think a person over 55 years of age could bring a younger person in as a roommate, but in terms of, how likely that is, it's very unlikely. I mean, we just, we have over 300 units of senior and elderly affordable housing in our portfolio, and we just don't see that happening.
Okay. And then we lead into, will Portsmouth residents have priority to sign up? I think this confusion was you offering to help people with applications. And, I see it as a generous gesture on your part, but really they should probably go about the application process themselves. First off, you would just be assisting them. You really have no, I'm guessing you really have no authority in enrolling people. That would be a separate authority, like Phoenix Housing when they come in to run the facility. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear for the record, where there aren't any applications to be completed. You have to be at least 70% complete with construction before you can start marketing apartments. All we've done is create a list of interested persons because the phone rings and, they ask to be kept up to date on developments. And so that's what we do and nothing more.
Okay.
And you're absolutely correct that at that 70% completion point, Phoenix Property Management will take the reins and start marketing the apartments for rent.
Thank you. Lastly, it's, I think we pretty much know this by now. It's, just to be clear, the senior center will not be owned by the seniors themselves. And it's basically a shared space with the residents who live there. Is that a correct assumption?
So the senior center condo would be owned by the town, and they would lease it to the senior center organization. And then the housing development would enter a service agreement with the senior center organization to provide programming of the entire senior center space. And yes, it's a shared space because outside of the hours of 9 to 4, the residents will have access to it. On the weekends, when it's not being used by the senior center, the residents will have access to it. And the residents will have access to it during the day. And as the director of the senior center has said, they welcome the residents there to join the senior center and be members and participate in the programming. That's really the driving motivation behind this development, is to create a space that, has added vitality because you have members of the senior community living right in the same location where the senior center is.
You just ask one quick question. Christian, you mentioned the hours 9 to 4, Monday through Friday. If there was additional funding or additional ability for the senior center staff, they could expand those hours if they wanted to. They're not locked into those hours.
I mean, we'll enter an agreement, and if they propose something else, we'll evaluate what they proposed at that time.
Mr. President, you mentioned Phoenix Management. They're the folks that do the Anthony House, aren't they?
Yeah, Anthony House is a church community housing development.
Okay. I have only heard good. Only heard good about Anthony.
Yeah, I don't think the neighborhood's really gone downhill since we did that.
Well, I used to play ball in the back there, so I'm gonna, but Escobar's farm still smells the same.
Yep,
Thank goodness.
sure does.
Okay, so I just want to try to keep this on point with the questions. So Mr. Gleason?
Yeah, those were the questions that I asked.
Okay,
And
so,
I don't think I answered one of them,
okay,
which is the preference question.
Yep.
And it's true, you are not allowed to discriminate, but I invite anybody that's concerned about this to get in contact with me, and I'll give you a tour of any of our senior and elderly housing developments. This idea that people from, other parts of the state will flock here to move into these apartments is just, it doesn't happen. People only want to live where they have a connection, where they either, grew up, or they worked here for many years, or they have family here. And as an example, the list of interested persons that I've been keeping has probably 25 people on it now. And they are all people that live in Portsmouth, or they lived in Portsmouth, or their children live in Portsmouth, and their children want them to be closer because they're getting up in years and they want to have that social safety net. They want to have people with eyes on them. And so it's just, we'll give you a tour of Anthony House. We'll give you a tour of Harbor House, West House, Mumford Manor, and you can come and ask them for yourself. How did you come to live here? And without exception, you're going to find that those are not people from other parts of the state. They're going to be people that have a strong connection with that community, and that's why they want to live there.
One other point though, the senior center, I was involved many years. One of the issues that sometimes emerged because it was right on the bus path.
Mhm.
So a lot of folks from Bristol used to come over, and a lot of people from Middletown, because it was a success. And that did cause some consternation among the Portsmouth people as to who had the rights, okay? And sometimes it got pretty testy. I'm just saying that was because of the bus route. It was just very convenient for people to get in and out.
And I would say that that's a problem that the senior center folks could have to manage again in the future. That's out of our hands.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, so Mr. Bill, I have a couple of questions. Once these condos are fully occupied, these apartments, sorry, the apartments are fully occupied, how many people would that be in total?
Well, there are 41 bedroom apartments and 14 two-bedroom apartments. So, 68
68.
approximately.
And do you know what the capacity of the senior center condo is?
Uh,
How many people would be allowed into that space at one time?
off the top of my head, I don't know. You're the first person that has asked me that question, honestly.
Well, there's been fear, I think, that the people in the apartments will somehow swarm into the senior center and displace Portsmouth residents who want to use it.
I mean, I would argue that many of the people that are going to be living there are already members of the senior center, and, you know, it's the same size as it was before. I can't imagine that there's going to be significant conflict between the residents and
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I was just curious if it was even physically possible that that scenario could occur.
physically possible.
Yeah,
I mean, if they, I suppose.
The capacity is set by the
Yeah.
fire department and fire marshal. So, I mean, you could ask them to do a plan review and
Right.
tell you what the square footage is.
Well, I think.
I think equally likely is that the senior center members swarm in and try to take over the space there. I mean, I don't know what, you know, how likely either of those scenarios are.
But there will be, there will be an agreement for the operation and programming of the space. So these things should be, you know, known in advance activities. So there will be schedule. I mean, the objective is to maintain the programming.
Right.
And then there's a flex space, shared space for functions and
and
whatnot.
the senior center management will continue to administer those programs, so they will have essentially control of what goes on. So,
Yeah, I'd just remind everybody that the senior center space was designed in collaboration with the Senior Center Advisory Group, that this council appointed those members. It included the former executive director of the senior center. It included the director of the senior center and the former chair of the senior center board of directors, as well as many members of the senior center and yourself, Mr. Aguirre, and some town staff. And so, you know, we had a list of all of the programming that went on there, and the spaces have been designed specifically to accommodate that programming. So I think if anything, the space that you're going to get is,
Hold on a second. We have a cell phone going.
I mean, rock it
We're
out.
we're all
All
kicking
right.
off the rust.
All right. No, that's okay.
I got one last.
Well, wait, hold on. I think Mr. Belden were you all,
yeah, I was just saying that I think the space, you know, will be better suited to provide the programming that the senior center has historically provided.
Just one more life story. I used to have a client over at the Anthony House.
Mhm.
And I was trying, she was like 30 years older than me at least.
Mhm.
And I was trying to set an appointment for her.
Mhm.
And I was gonna come out, but she was never there. She was going line dancing, she was going to Boxwood, she was doing, and it was kind of like, you know, I'm the younger guy, I should have a social life. She had more of a social life. And actually, I would tell you her name, but her name was Gertrude. And it would just amaze me. Finally, it was kind of like, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning, I had to get over there, and that was too early for me. So anyway, if you run it like that, in my experience anyway, it will be a wonderful for all the seniors.
I hope so.
Mr. Gleason?
I just wanted to finish a
Yep.
comment because I think you probably have this number in your head. Is how many square feet is the senior center? I mean, it seems to me it was like 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Or something of that nature.
The condo is 2,500 square feet. The entire space is 8,500 square feet.
8,500, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's at least is the size that we have now, I would suspect.
I believe it's very comparable. And again, I would point out the existing senior center is in a school building that was not designed as a senior center. And so there are many advantages to actually designing a space from scratch as a senior center for it to function well.
So thank you for answering my questions.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Now,
Now we have, now there may have been some questions on this list that presented by Ms. Martin that maybe have not been answered.
Mhm.
So I know Ms. Martin is behind you. So what I'd like to do is just identify which questions have not been answered so that we can get an answer to those questions as well.
Looks like number 3, the price of the condo for the senior center is not clear. I can explain that.
Okay.
So the town applied for community development block grant funds specifically for the acquisition of the senior center condo. And the state denied that application because there is no condo to acquire yet and encouraged the town to reapply at a later date. In the meantime, Rhode Island Housing stepped up to the plate and provided gap funding. And we just indicated that the town will apply for funding again in the future. And if it gets that funding, it will acquire the condo for the same amount of the funding. So net zero cost to the town. If the CDBG funds do not get awarded, then there is zero cost to the town because it's already 100% funded. And Rhode Island Housing knew that they were taking that risk when they awarded the funding, that they might not get paid back. And that really it comes down to whether or not the state through the Community Development Block Grant Program wants to fund the town for the acquisition of that condo.
Thank you, Mr. Bella.
Thank you.
I think there was a question about Rhode Island Housing approval. What will the loan proceeds be applied and used for? Well, the loan proceeds are both construction loan and permanent financing, as well as other ancillary funding sources and tax credit equity. And it all goes into the construction of the housing and senior center.
And I think those were the bulk of the questions that that we could provide specific answers to. The fourth question is kind of an open-ended one, but I know Ms. Martin is behind you, so I would like to just ask if if you could come on up.
I just have a follow-up comment on, thank you, Mary Ellen Martin, 21 Massachusetts Boulevard. Mr. Belden answered the question about the different types of housing and.
Young lady, should I ask you to pull the mic down? Okay.
Sure, sorry. He answered the question about the type of housing that will be developed at the Ann Hutchinson School, and he said 55 and older. We seem to keep forgetting the point. This project was approved by the voters. It went to a special election, and that ballot question reads elderly affordable housing, which is the 62 and over. And it also said a senior center, a new senior center facility. Again, we keep missing what the voters approved. The senior center is not getting a facility, they're getting shared space, and the condo is for their office space, not for the use of their programs. It's also concerning, my first question I had asked specifically about the programming, regarding this shared space and the senior center access and the residents of that will be living there, their access. There's still no agreement in place, but yet we're moving forward with a ground lease. As the town is the landlord, and as the landlord, they should know and be aware of all the agreements that are in place. It should be an entire package before they sign a ground lease, giving church community permission essentially to do whatever they want. And they could essentially change their mind and change the plan, which they have done already. The plan has changed considerably from what the voters approved. And we're still in that same position.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Mr. Belden?
Yeah, I would, to the first point about elderly versus senior, it's 55 and up. And what we see is that the vast majority of the applications that we get for senior housing are for persons beyond 62 years of age. It's common that people in the 55 to 60-year-old range are not ready to live in an age-restricted facility yet. And so I think the function will be to serve the elderly population for housing. And I would also say to the next point about they're not getting a senior center facility, that the Senior Center Advisory Group thinks they're getting a senior center facility because they helped us design one for them. And so I'm not sure, if they're happy with it, then I don't know who else I need to please.
Thank you, Mr. Belden.
And I'm not sure what changes have happened either that, we could address.
Hello, could I speak next?
Yes. Name,
Oh,
and
oh, yeah.
name and address?
First of all, we can't hear you back here at all on your little microphones. We can't hear you back there.
Okay.
Sorry if, no.
Some people would consider that a good thing.
Yeah, probably, but not today. Good evening. My name is Margie Rattay. I live at 28 Cromwell Drive. I am the Senior Center Board Chairperson. On your ground lease, which you have in your minutes and everything here, on the first page, under the lease definition, 1.1C, the building mentions and a senior center. Also mentioned on page 6, item number 5, under the use and sublease and senior center. I'd like to point out that we, meaning the senior center, we're told that we are getting an office space and shared amenity space, but we are not technically getting a standalone senior center. That, a lot of people thought that might, be the way to go. Since the so-called senior center, otherwise known as the shared amenities and office space, is mentioned in this ground lease, I ask, where is our, meaning the senior center, ground lease agreement? On the, well, I'll get back to that. Are we to become a tenant of the town of Portsmouth, or is it expected that we become a subtenant with Church Community Housing or some other organization once the facility is constructed? I cannot find anywhere in this document that offers any protection or any guarantees for the senior center space, that Portsmouth Senior Center will occupy that space. By reviewing this document, it is apparent that there are no contractual agreements concerning the Portsmouth Senior Center. I have concerns that we as a membership community are not being fairly represented here. I also remind you that the Senior Center is still under contract with the town of Portsmouth until 2034. And I have a copy of that over here. There's no guarantee that this shared space is even going to be offered to the Portsmouth Senior Center community. During my last conversation with Mr. Belden, he alluded that there were no guarantees that the shared space would be given to the Portsmouth Senior Center. As chair and representative of the Portsmouth Senior Center community, I am requesting that the lease agreement, be delayed until we have a seat at the table and are included in the ground lease, subject to all parties being in agreement. Does that make sense?
That was a lot.
Okay, all right.
But I think we get the gist of it, and you're kind of jumping ahead with the ground lease, which is part of
Yeah,
the item as old business, because the town did enter into an agreement back in February of 22,
mhm,
where we signed the option to allow Church Community to continue to move forward
mhm,
and develop their plans, get their permits, all with the understanding that they would come back to us
mhm.
with the framework of the ground lease. And that was all discussed back in February of 22. I think this design of the senior center
Mhm.
Space has been going on for a while. I believe there was a lot of collaboration. I was involved early on with some of the collaboration, the planning that Mr. Belden has indicated. The current facility probably won't make it for 2034. It is in a state of disrepair. There were some issues there where we were not being able to use some of the space. So this has all been well documented, that our plan all along has been to move forward. And as part of this project, a component would be the town is going to acquire a unit inside of the building, which will, and then there will be shared space, and this will all be housing the senior center. Now, the Portsmouth Senior Center is a 501(c) that currently manages it. I believe the framework is that an agreement needs to be made for how the facility would now be managed, but the town of Portsmouth will be the owner, not the Portsmouth Senior Center organization. The town of Portsmouth is the owner of the building, of the space, the condo. So that there seems to be a misunderstanding of who's actually going to own it. The town of Portsmouth is going to own it. And then there will be an entity, the Portsmouth Senior Center is the intent, the organization will be the entity that's going to be managing and assisting with the programming that was previously discussed. And if I'm speaking out of turn, Mr. Belden, Mr. Frainer, if I'm speaking out of turn, please correct me. But that has been my understanding for several years now, that there would be a shared space, that there would be a brand new facility. And there was a lot of planning that has gone on with the understanding of this was our goal. And back in February 22, when the town council voted unanimously to enter into this agreement, that gave church community permission to continue to move forward, develop the design, and work out the framework for the ground lease. Was all part of something that the town had approved. Even putting it out for the voters was all stuff that was discussed. So I think the intent has been pretty consistent. There's been some discussions that the plans have changed dramatically, substantially. I don't think so. This thing did go to the planning board. There were several public hearings through the approval process. I mean, I have a copy of the original plan. I am aware of what the current plan is. It does look pretty consistent with the intent of what the town got into over 2 years ago.
But did you read, the contract?
I have read the
read
ground lease. There are
everything?
two ground leases, right? There's two. Well, it's two because it's two. There's two buildings, right? And that's the way it was structured. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you have the main building, but then you also have the old school building.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I just wondered if you really read this.
I read it.
You'd really have to read this again, because I don't think you caught everything.
I caught a typo in egress. There's egress. Yeah, so there, I did read it.
Okay, well, it's.
Mr.
Yes, and then
If he
Mr. Rainer.
looks, I think there's misunderstanding. And obviously we'll discuss this when we discuss the ground lease, but this lease is between the town and church community.
Yes.
The Portsmouth Senior Center is a separate entity. They're not a town department. We will enter into an agreement with them so that they will be able to operate the space that the town owns, as you so described.
The point I was going to make is that I think the problem is that they're looking for terms and conditions that aren't to be found in a ground lease. This is a lease of ground. It doesn't pertain to the buildings. And so that's why you're not seeing what you're looking to see. It doesn't exist yet. So you can't have those terms and conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Belton. I'm sorry.
I'm ready to make a motion.
No.
I was just gonna ask, whether Ms. Rattay was happy with the answer she got. I think what she was saying, and I think it's becoming clearer to me, and this is why we're here to ask these questions, because that was first for me, that the town, which makes sense, is gonna own the condo. And the guidelines of how senior center space would be run, who cleans what, who's responsible for painting, who does the floors, et cetera, would be similar to the 1994 agreement. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Rayner? I mean, it would be between the town and the senior center as opposed to the CCH and the senior center for operation of the
I
shared
think
space.
this was discussed when we gave the senior center brief. The maintenance and caretaking of the building will be done by Phoenix Housing. This will actually be less onerous on the town and less onerous on the senior center.
maintenance of the building, interior, exterior, maintenance, not the actual
But-
programming of space. That's where-
Programming and rules and regulations per se would be with the town as a non-maintenance items.
Correct. I mean, we'll own the condo, but we're gonna lease that to the senior center organization and then they'll be responsible for it. We will be the landlord of the condo.
I'd just like to make one clarifying comment. It's true that Phoenix Property Management will do the maintenance and pay the utility bills of the exterior and of the 6,000 square feet of shared senior center space.
Yeah.
But the 2,500 square foot condo, the interior space, will be the town's responsibility. The utilities won't be something we pay. You know, it's very simple. The other spaces are spaces that are typically built in a senior housing development. And so the housing development can pay for the maintenance and upkeep of it. But offices for another organization and a thrift shop and those things are not typically built in a senior housing development. And so that's why we broke out the condo from the rest of the space.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Belden. Thank you for clarifying. And right now, I mean, that's something that the senior center does take care of some of those things. So the burden would be a less intense moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. President, can I, and I apologize for this question coming out of the blue, but nothing in this will disqualify us from getting, I think, of the yearly $20,000 or $30,000 grant from the state for running a senior center.
Well, we
Don't we get a grant from the
No.
state?
No,
No,
no.
we give the senior center a grant, but
Yeah.
no, we had no money.
Yeah, no,
If you can go find it, we'll take it.
yeah,
I think I was thinking of the library.
okay.
Yeah.
I apologize.
So, go ahead.
Oh, sure.
Kevin Fennessy, 2774 East Main Road. Forgive me for reverting back to the nebulous subject of eligibility. My question is, does the state because of their existent list of placing people in appropriate settings, do they have any say over whether or not, and does their list override any lists that we might have? And perhaps Mr. Belden having had experience in a number of facilities with your organization, can you answer that question?
Yeah, there are certain types of housing where there's a rental subsidy, a rental subsidy associated with it. And in those cases, you have to go to the subsidy providers wait list. This is not one of those developments. We'll be able to keep our own wait list. And in fact, the federal government has realized that this should be true for all affordable housing developments, that you shouldn't have to go off of a centralized wait list and that you can have property specific wait lists. And so they have just issued rules that require Rhode Island Housing and other housing authorities to implement a process by which properties can maintain their own wait lists. And I think that they have until January to implement that. Don't quote me, but it's within the next year to 18 months that that'll be a requirement for them. So, but that isn't this kind of development anyway. This is a tax credit development. It, as long as you meet the income eligibility, the rents that I quoted before are what you pay, and we get to keep the wait lists. And by we, I mean the property management company.
Thank you, Mr. Belden. Mr. Fennessy, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I was just going to clarify, anecdotal information. I saw for the first time, I asked, the senior center, chair, Cindy, the director, excuse me, for a copy. And it's from 1994, signed by Barbara McLaughlin. She had asked for a new contract, she told me. Some of the things that are on here refer to the demised premises back in 1994. They were referred to as demised. And they talk about who is able to park in the area. You know, there's not exclusive senior parking. It was to be shared with the Portsmouth Little League. things of that nature all need to be brought up to, to current standards, which hopefully we'll do here. But I could see where we would drop off the maintenance section, but there are still sections in here for term and rent, how much the rent would be, et cetera, et cetera. Referencing the existing lease, which would go through 2034, which would be all reincorporated, Mr. Rayner?
When we work on the lease with the Portsmouth Senior Center,
Yes.
then we'll
Yeah.
address those kinds of
Correct.
issues.
Thank you.
I think that's where some of the
yeah,
confusion lies here between the ground lease and
Yeah.
a lease with the seniors
Right.
themselves.
Yep. No, and I think, I think it's clear that a new agreement will be formulated because this is a new property with new space and new, a lot of new entities. So
Right.
that's still work to be done. And that's, that's something that the council will be involved in with that agreement.
Mary McDowell, 94 Point Road, Portsmouth. So I think it might have been answered, but I'm not sure. So who will work on the service agreement for the shared space with church community? Will it be the town or will it be the senior center? And it, once that's answered, will this service agreement be in place before construction?
So the service agreement will be between the entity that owns the housing development, the Ade Bethune House Limited Partnership, and the senior center. However, the housing development cannot enter into a service agreement with the senior center until the town leases the senior center condo to the senior center, because otherwise they're not in the space yet. So that has to happen first, and that can't happen until after we build it and sell it to the town. And they enter into a lease with the senior center, and then we can enter a service agreement with the senior center.
Thank you, Mr. Belden. Okay,
Mr. President, I would move that we approve. I'd like to do them all together, ground lease, area A, ground lease, area B, with the phasing plans and the documentation associated with area B and area A.
I think my own personal viewpoint was there's two.
Sorry?
I say my own personal viewpoint of this topic was to get through the questions and then discuss the ground lease, other than there may be some questions of the participants here about the ground lease. I know I had some myself.
I'm making a
Okay.
motion to approve, and at the point where we have a second and approval, then it will be open to the floor for discussion.
Okay.
If there's a second.
I'll second it. Sorry, I'll second it for discussion.
so
It's a discussion.
I believe there's going to be discussion on the ground lease, Mr. Gleason, is that, okay?
Sorry. They're pretty much the same,
They are.
A and B. But get rid of my 1994 version here. Section 3.4 talks about the tenant's covenants to pay and discharge an additional rent. It talks about the lease together with every fine, penalty, interest, and cost which may be added for non-payment or late payment thereof. What are we referring to here? I guess is the question. Does anybody have that? You have the copy?
Mr. Gleason, could you say again what the area you're looking at?
Section 3.4
Page 4.
on page 4.
Our attorney, Samuel Budway, is participating via Zoom, and he just raised his hand. I think he can probably answer your question.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Samuel Budway. I'm with the firm Chase Rottenberg and Friedman, and I'm here on behalf of Church Community Housing Corporation with regards to the ground leases that are before you this evening. Councilman Gleason, to answer your question, Section 3.4 of the ground lease is designed to ensure that the town, as the landlord under this ground lease, is not left with any financial responsibility associated with the land being leased to Church Community Housing Corporation. The intent is to make this as simple as possible for the town for the purposes of effectuating the development. All of the responsibility associated with taxes, utility charges, and the like are to be borne on behalf of Church Community Housing Corporation. That's the intent of this section. It follows, as you'll see, sections 3.3 entitled Utilities, a section 3.2 additional rent, and section 3.1 rent. All of these are designed to establish the financial relationship and the idea that the tenant and not the landlord, town, bear the burden of those financial costs.
Thank you. When you go back to section D, when you're talking about the relief from real estate impositions, can you tell me what that means?
Can you
Tenant
hear
may
me?
request and pursue any and all such relief from real estate impositions.
Yep, I raised my hand. I'm assuming you can hear me again.
Yes, yes.
You have
Okay.
the floor, essentially.
Thank you. Okay. So with regards to this, right now it is envisioned that this project will pay its share of taxation under state law. And if for some reason in payment of the taxes related to the improvements on this project, to the extent that they are in fact incorrect, if there's an incorrect valuation, if there's an incorrect assessment, if there's an incorrect bill that is sent out to the property, to the ground lessee, and to the extent that those taxes are in fact incorrect in any way, shape, or form, it gives the Church Community Housing Corporation the ability to go ahead and run down those errors and review them with the taxing authority. And it could be, again, in the state of Rhode Island, we have a municipality who's charged with taxing on behalf of the state of Rhode Island. However, if that were to change, given the length of this lease, if taxing authorities changed and it wasn't the town of Portsmouth who was assessing the taxes, it gives the Church Community Housing Corporation the right to chase down taxing errors wherever they stem from.
Thank you for that clarification. My concern, and I'm not I don't have my legalese dictionary handy here, is I just wanted, because I was just concerned that this was talking about the ability to not pay taxes, but I misinterpreted that totally. So
Yeah,
thank
no,
you
this is in case an
for you
imposition
to
is
be
done
able to
incorrectly. Yeah,
refine the tax bill to you if necessary.
correct.
Okay,
Well, to be more precise, I mean, this is a lease between the town and the tenant, which is the housing, which is the Phoenix,
Church community.
Church Community. If in fact a ability opens up that senior housing for some reason would be eligible for tax abates or something, I'm sure that they would probably apply for it and hopefully put those savings off to the tenants of the building. So, I mean, again, any concern with regard to this, for instance, the first question, it's the tenant that is Church Community obligation to pay those bills, not us.
Right.
We're pretty much on the good side of almost everything I saw here.
I'd just like to correct you if I may. We wouldn't apply for that tax abeyance. It's been CCHC's long-standing policy that we pay property taxes just like everybody else does. And so there's a state law that says that property taxes shall be paid at 8% of gross potential rent. So that's how these properties get taxed. So 8% of all of the rent that we could collect is the property tax that we'll pay to the town of Portsmouth every year going forward. We won't apply for a tax abeyance. And I would just point out that that's a big difference from the town's position currently, where it is providing a building to the senior center and doesn't get any tax revenue. It's not on the tax rolls. But it will be in the future.
Okay, I'm on page 6. And we're talking about the sublease. I guess the question would be potentially the subtenants. Is the senior center considered a subtenant in this contract? And would there be other subleases of the property that you foresee? It
So,
looks like you have the language to provide that.
Yeah, so Councilman, the way in which this is structured is that the town leases the land to Church Community Housing Corporation. In turn, Church Community Housing Corporation will lease the land further to Adabethuan Limited Partnership. It is a limited partnership that is created specifically for the purposes of developing, constructing, operating, and maintaining the affordable housing real estate development that is envisioned as part of this project. Within the footprint of the improvements that are to be built and maintained, the condo structure, which encompasses the approximately 2,500 square feet, and then the shared facility space, which is within the larger sublease. All of this structuring is done such that the eventual subtenant will be Adabethuan Limited Partnership. Separate and apart from that, the sale of the condo to the town will be a sale. The town will own the improvements for that space. Now, there is financing that could change whether or not it's a sale of a condo unit or a lease of that space based on whether or not, as Mr. Belden had mentioned earlier, whether or not the town is successful in receiving another community development block grant funding. But either way, the town and the town's relationship with the 501c3, that entire relationship takes place 2 levels down from where we are currently. There's initial ground lease, town to CCHC, one lease, an additional sub-ground lease from CCHC to Adabethuan Limited Partnership. And then the relationship there is either between Adabethuan Limited Partnership as a sale to the town for its space, or a lease of that space to the town if the funding is not present, is not awarded.
And Mr. Gleason, can I point out again, the paragraph B there indicates that if the tenant desires to sublease, they have to apply to the council or the town, okay? And they have to give a 60-day notice, and we have to approve it. And the only condition on that approval is that the approval shall not be withheld for any unreasonable grounds or for any or delayed for any purpose. So we'll have kind of the final decision still.
And I'll also note, thank you, Councilman. I'll also note that that sublease, the parameters for that sublease and the concept and the use of the sublease has been already the subject of numerous conditions that myself, the office of the town solicitor, and outside counsel to the town solicitor on this matter have had. So the parameters and the concept of that and what you'll see pretty much mirrors what you're seeing here. It's just one further level down and a little bit more detailed on exactly what the premises being subleased are, and also to the extent who the parties are, and again, mirroring a lot of what you see here today, just more defined to the actual space that is relevant to that sublease.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions, please. I'm on page 10, 7.2, the no encumbrances. I guess in my mind, I'm just questioning whether the existing senior center lease would be considered an encumbrance. If you could clarify that.
So it is not, I can tell you that the existing lease is not an encumbrance on this land, and that lease, to the extent that it exists, is already taken into account by the project's title council. And so we have, to the extent that it creates a cloud on title, we've managed that issue, and to the extent that it doesn't create a cloud on title, it's not an encumbrance. This section, 7.2, is prospectively looking. This is as of the effective date of this ground lease, once this ground lease is fully executed. It is just ensuring that the town, as the fee simple landowner of the property, does not take any new mortgages or any encumbrances specifically with regards to its ownership in this property after this lease is in fact executed, not necessarily, and this is an important piece, not necessarily as a future owner of the condo. That's completely different. You'll have that and you'll own that as your outright, or you will lease it from Adibethuan Limited Partnership and can encumber your interests there. This is simply because Area A, Area B, and Area C at this larger parcel all have to operate independently. This is a requirement that the town not encumber the property as a whole as its role as the master ground landlord.
Thank you. The last one here is, I have on page 13 is the right to mortgage. And if you could just explain that section, please.
Absolutely. So entire section 9 and specifically section 9.1 is a mirroring section that you'll see in the sublease that comes before you with regards to Adibethuan Limited Partnership and is important here to Church Community Housing Corporation. Without the ability of Church Community Housing Corporation and Adibethuan Limited Partnership as the subtenant of Area A, we are unable to induce or allow the financial institutions and Rhode Island Housing as a financing partner in this project. We're unable to convince them or allow them to lend any funds or provide any grant funding or any type of project funding necessary for this financing to move forward without their ability to place a mortgage on Church Community Housing Corporation and or Adibethuan Limited Partnership's interests in the property. Now, I can tell you as a practical matter, Church Community Housing Corporation will not mortgage Area A. They are simply the conduit for the sublease to Adibethuan Limited Partnership. Adibethuan Limited Partnership, as the subtenant of Area A, absolutely will, as part of the full financial project financing, encumber their interest in Area A with a number of different financial institutions who are financing this project in Rhode Island Housing. This section gives them the right to do so because it is not inherent when you lease anything, land improvements or the like, that you have a right to obtain those types of mortgages. This section outlines that right and outlines the responsibilities that those mortgage holders have to the town as landlord and the town as landlord as it pertains to those mortgage holders.
Thank you very much for the clear answers to my questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. Okay. Any further?
I would say, Mr. Gleason, I have spent many hours with clients explaining some of the questions you have just asked, particularly in business ones. Most of this is language, and I think the attorney will agree, that the title company or the bank insists that you have in the agreement that will allow them actually the flexibility to do certain things that are necessary, but primarily it just protects. But as you noted in this, the tenant can only oblige their interest, that is the leasehold. They can't oblige the land, which is still held by us. So I think your question is very fair, but I think we're protected.
Very good. That's my concern. I just want to make sure it's the best contract.
I gotta tell you,
Went
Dave,
forward.
I've spent hours trying to explain that to my client, so you
Well,
did pretty good picking up on it.
sure.
All right.
Mr. President, I believe there's a motion on the floor.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you all. Okay, so that concludes old business. I know some of the folks are here. We've concluded on the senior center, so if you want to, you're more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. If not, now would be an opportunity to head on out before we get into the new business. Know what that is. Oh. Somebody's keys are on the floor. Whose keys? There's keys on the floor in front of a seat. Who? Oh, wow. When was that?
Oh, okay. All right, good.
Give me 1 second here to
I wasn't even looking.
consolidate.
You're making a mess over there.
No, I had a lot of paperwork, a lot of paper.
You want to mess it? I took it as a what, and I thought it was gonna take long.
Okay. All right. Let us move on to new business. The first item under new business is the appointment of the new town council vice president.
Mr. President? Oh,
Well, I was gonna open it up to the nominations.
If I might, as you know, the Vice President, Lenny Katzman, for solid and good reasons of his own, had to resign the position. And I think all of you will agree with me that Lenny was probably the most considerate, most conscientious person, one of them to sit on this board. I did think pretty long and hard about who should replace him. I don't know if replace is the appropriate phrase, but I do believe that my friend, the doc, Mr. Ryan, Dr. Ryan, is somebody that I think all of us agree is a considerate, conscientious member of this board. And I would like to place a nomination, Dr. Ryan to be the new vice chair of this board.
Thank you, Mr. Levesque.
Is there a second?
No, we're just.
You don't need a second for
nomination.
nomination.
Oh, okay.
Mr. President, I appreciate your comments about Dr. Ryan. However this ends up, sure it'll be fine. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't nominate Keith Hamilton for vice president based on his years of experience. I think you know that he runs the meeting well, he has in the past, and got a wealth of information that my brain can't retain. So I would nominate Keith Hamilton for vice president.
Appreciate that.
Okay, so seeing that there are 5 of us. And I would agree with both nominations. I think that either candidate would serve admirably as the vice president. So the way we'll go is I'll take votes for each candidate and we'll see where it goes. I think I know where this is gonna go.
Hey, there's 2 people being nominated. Can we vote for ourselves?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Making sure.
No, you can't do that.
Can't do that.
Either way, I don't think it's,
You vote for Mark and
Yeah.
he'll vote for
That would
you,
really be confusing.
and that will work out.
We'll do a double blind secret ballot. with check marks.
That would satisfy the CDC.
It's the same process that we use once the new council is.
Right. It's been
So-
so long since we've done this. I couldn't remember how we did it.
And so, so all in favor of,
Well, Mr. Ryan's first.
I know, hold on, all in favor of Mr. Ryan as vice president, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Yeah,
Nay.
So it's 3-2. All in favor of Mr. Hamilton as vice president, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Hey, I guess.
So I was afraid it was going to be 3-2, 3-2.
How'd you know that?
There's a space on either side of me. I'm in the middle. And, you know, in all honesty, it is very unfortunate that Mr. Katzman was not able to fulfill his term.
Yes.
We have gone a few months without a vice president. It's a short sprint to the finish line here with this term. It is an election year. I'm okay if we do not have a vice president. Right now it's a tie.
You're just making a power grab here. They're taking all of it.
I'm going out in style.
Are you planning on missing any?
I am not planning on missing any meetings.
That
I have
is
a
moot
I
point.
have a very good track. I have missed a couple over the years of serving as president, but I do not anticipate missing any meetings.
Well,
and
just
so-
in the off chance that you're stuck and you can't make it to a meeting, we should have at least somebody designated to fill in.
Well, I think what happens at
Well, I
that
think
point,
it's the oldest.
it would be
serving member, which is Mr.
seniority.
Hamilton, so de facto, you're the man.
Well, it's
Longest
only,
serving, not the oldest.
right, but it's only in the event that I'm not
I
I'm not
see what
here.
you did
I
there.
think I remember what it's called.
So I would appreciate, I think what's more important is actually our next item is
Right.
just making sure we have a full complement
Right.
of counselors. It's been unfortunate that, you know, we've through planned vacations, sickness, and emergencies, we did miss one meeting. And I think that's the first time that's happened in at least my 10 years on the council. I can't think of another time. And we even went through some challenges during COVID and we still had our meetings. So I assure you, I will do everything in my power to be here while I can, at least until I'm thrown out. So thank you all for this tonight. And I'm comfortable that we move forward without filling the spot.
We essentially have 7 meetings left until a new council is
Yeah,
roughly.
six meetings, I think.
I hereby declare us the bipartisan council.
All right. So
Until the
now,
next vote.
yeah. So now let's move on to the next item, which is the appointment of a new council member. And, you know, we have 10 applicants. I do want to thank all those that have expressed their interest. There's a lot of good candidates here, varied degrees of experience and background. And again, this is a short haul. There's still, 3 months, so about 6 or 7 meetings until a new board is voted in by the voters and take effect either the end of November or early December. So I'd like to same approach here with accepting application nominations, and then we vote on the nominations.
Mr. President, if I might.
Oh, Dr. Ryan had his hand up.
It's all right. I'd like to nominate Juan Carlos Piero. He was the next highest vote getter in the last election. So I think it's reasonable to nominate him to fill the vacancy.
I would like to second that nomination, but I'd like to speak to the nomination subsequently.
Okay.
Okay. First, as the council president indicated, there were some extraordinary applications. I really do think so. Teddy Pipes, are you here? Yeah. I know you. I think I want to hopefully keep you involved because I think your talents can very much be used by the town. Mr. Phelps, is he here? Okay, that would be, I believe, the old Prescott Farm, and certainly that family has a tremendous connection to the town of Portsmouth. I read one of the articles just very quickly. If you go to the Valley Inn Steakhouse, sometimes they have a dinner theater. And the story is about somebody who was murdered on the property. And you get a great dinner and you get a great story. And apparently a true story, and it was one of the Phelps relatives. If you have a chance, his application has a number of things that he was involved in, including he was one of the first people to write on the Anita Hill story, and her participation with Mr. Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice Thomas. There was also David, my old classmate from high school, put in an application. I will say he kind of mailed it in, wasn't the longest. And by the way, part of this is in the way of there is a question about the transparency of this board. And I do want to say that part of my arguments, even though clearly Mr. Piero is a Democrat and running for office, I'm going to talk of his qualifications shortly. Rosenzweig, I apologize if I mispronounced it, also a very strong resume that he presented. Certainly, I hope that he will keep interest in it. There is a Michael Rollo, who is a student at Roger Williams University. And I think him taking an interest in this is a great idea. I don't even know if when I was a college student, I would have found out about something like this. Ms. McDowell, I understand you have locked up the hummocks as I drive down the road there. I was very impressed with your resume also. I think you will eventually, or maybe in this election, bring some talents to the town. You would certainly have done so. I think the community that you were more involved with in the past. Charlene, who I know I've seen all the time, and nice application. You at least typed, David just kind of scrawled, okay? And certainly, you know, I respect the involvement that you have had over. Is Mr. DiPaolo here? Okay, I was kind of impressed with the fact that this is the first correspondence I got from you that didn't have one profanity in it, okay? I'm not sure that the correspondence I have gotten from you previously really recommended you to me. However, I am in all likelihood not going to vote for you, okay? And that leaves Keith Manville, and he also had an extraordinary resume. Again, another person that I would hope would stay involved. He has an interest and an ability, and I don't know if he's here, in electronics, and I think we certainly could use that. Now to Juan Carlos. I met him probably 3 years ago. I consider him an extraordinarily considerate individual, extraordinarily competent individual. He is a person who stands his ground. He is a person who will let you know what he's thinking, but was also can work with other people. I don't know that I care that he was the next highest vote getter. I know some people care about that. No, and it's a legit concern. He did run. He ran for school committee and ran and won. I think many of you might know that. He was the next highest vote getter. But of course, that can mean anything. That can mean, I always thought of myself as that everybody's seventh choice. All right, I don't get the most votes, but I might get up there, but it's only because everybody goes, oh, I'll give a vote for Charlie. Anyway, I think he will be a great addition to this council. And I would really urge all my colleagues to vote for him. He is, I think, an individual, and I do say this in the nature of transparency. I have not spoken to him. I have spoken to him. I apologize. I have spoken in his presence about my desire to have him get on this council, but I have not really spoken to him about coming on to this council. But I do think that it is not a partisan issue. I think he will be an excellent addition to this council. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Levesque. Other nominations? Mr. Gleason?
Thank you. I'll try and keep it a little bit briefer than that, Mr. Levesque. I
Oh, no,
do
Mr.
agree
David.
that we had a lot of good candidates. I would like to just ask for clarification. The first one you mentioned is Ted Peets. I think he's done a lot for the town. My only question to him would be, are you still in the category where you work for the military and you can't run for office due to the Hatch Act?
Thank you for that question. My name is Tito Pete, 85 Plum Road. So the way that the Hatch Act works is that federal employees that work for various federal agencies cannot participate in partisan elections such as what Portsmouth has. So other municipalities in Newport County, such as Tiverton, Middletown, and Newport, have what are called nonpartisan elections, where there's no D or R next to your name. And that allows anyone that's a federal employee, except if you're a certain class, to run in local election. So I could be appointed to this board, but I cannot run for election to this board.
That was a clarification I was looking for, because due to us being a partisan board, he cannot run because of rules that go back to 1928 or something, I don't know, 34 or something.
Actually, it was during FDR. He had
Yes.
control of the
So this would be
WPA.
the one opportunity where I would be able to nominate Mr. Peets to be a town councillor for 3 or 4 months. And then Juan Carlos would come back and run with me for the position. So I just thought it was a novel idea. I know what Ted has brought to the town. I think he has something else to bring with him for the next 3 months as well. And he deserves the opportunity. So I would nominate Ted Peets for the position.
Thank you. Any further nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Mr. David Reese because I like brevity in applications.
Mr. Hamilton, Mrs. Reese, his mother, she used to be so nice to me when I was sent down to the office to discuss
I believe she was nice to all of
disciplinary
us.
policy with the vice principal during my stay at Portsmouth High School. And she was a lovely, lovely, lovely woman. David, not so much.
Okay. So we have three nominations.
Yes, if I could just make a comment on it.
Sure, you,
I think Juan Carlos is a wonderful person. But by making a vote to move Juan Carlos from the school committee, we create a vacancy at the school committee and then therefore hamstring that committee and have to replace that person within 2 months of an election. And I think with the school committee and their job coming up, the school starts in 2 weeks, schools start in 2 weeks. I don't think we should be taking anybody away from that committee at this point in time.
thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Okay. All right, so we have the three applicants, or three nominations. We'll take them in order. We'll start with, the first one was for, Mr. Piero. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay, and no offense to Carlos.
Yeah, no, understood. The next one was for, Mr. Pites. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Sorry, Ted.
Okay, and then the final one was for Mr. Reese. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So congratulations goes to Mr. Piero, 3-2, as being our next candidate, town council member. You've been appointed. So you have to,
I can swear him in.
you can swear him in now. And what does that mean?
That means he can sit with us
He
for the
can
rest
sit
of
with
the
us
agenda.
for the rest of the agenda.
If you so choose.
Um,
Or I can
Was-
swear him in after the meeting.
I mean,
He's all dressed up.
he's all dressed up. All right. I mean,
There's not much left on the agenda
there's not much left on the, well, there's
I
like
mean,
12 items.
of consequence.
Yeah.
Real co- but
No, I
that's you.
do swear him in after, because it wouldn't be fair to have him jump in on the agenda items. So let's, but congratulations, Mr. Piero, and really thank you to all the applicants. And I know some of them, as was discussed, are currently seeking, election this go around. So I wish you all luck moving forward. And trying to make the town a better place. Let's move on to new business number 3, which is.
Mr. President, I move that we advertise for a public hearing on a sound variance for a block party.
That'd be on the twenty-sixth? Yeah, is that too quick? 26th
It says October, this is,
We could do the 26th.
of August. I'm referring to
Yeah.
August is when they had the hearing.
It only has to be
26th.
advertisement.
Okay.
August 26th.
I'm just putting a date on there for your motion. I'll second
Oh,
it for the-
okay.
for the 26th of August.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, it's request permission to hold the second annual Secana Coastal Bike and Stroll event to be held on Saturday, September 14th.
Second,
Just a request that they use some of the new roads through Island Park. They're beautiful right now.
they are. And Mr. Vick, I will give you credit. It was a much better event than I ever anticipated it to be. You did a good job. Don't rest on your laurels.
I promise. John Vikavich, 119 Hummock Avenue, Portsmouth, Rhode Island. I wanted to say we had, and Chris is right here, without Bike Newport and Chris and the grant that we, it was perfect. I just want to say it that way. It was I'm very proud of Portsmouth. Police Department, Public Works Department, Fire Department. We all did what we do. 02871 is fun. We're going to do the same way we did it last year. We're going to shorten the course by 2 blocks so that we don't interfere with Flo's and Schultz's, because they open at 11:30 on a Saturday. So that we don't want to keep them locked out for that half hour. I promise I will. I just want to point out that you don't know how much wind a tractor trailer blows off when you're putting a sign up. Because that's how the sign got out of my hand. This tractor trailer went by me and he was going more than 65 and it just blasted out of my hand, and landed right on my leg. Did you see the pictures?
Yes.
Yeah, the kids. I'm gonna go over, Chris and I are gonna plan to go over, if we're approved tonight, I've already reached out to DOT. Chris and I are gonna go over and do a thing in Tiverton to let them know, because we got this beautiful bike path on the bridge. Let them ride over and join us. I thank you, and if there's any questions, let Chris do his thing. Chris, you're up. Thanks.
Hi there, Chris Barker, 160 King Philip Street, and so Portsmouth resident, but also development director at Bike Newport. And despite the name, Bike Newport is an island-wide bike safety education and advocacy nonprofit. We do have programs here in Portsmouth as well as Newport and Middletown. And we were so grateful to the town of Portsmouth for embracing this event last year. We thought it was a wonderful success. So grateful for the buy-in and participation of town leaders, Chief Peters, Brian Woodhead, attending meetings and just being participatory from the start really was a great success. And the importance of these events is not only to let the public display its own interest and demand for safe and separated bike infrastructure, which we hope one day to achieve more of here on the island and create some connected bike and pedestrian infrastructure that's safe and protected from motor vehicles. But it's also to promote Island Park and the hummocks as a destination for not only Portsmouth residents, but residents of neighboring communities. So that's the importance of the event. We drew in close to 400 attendees last year, and through Eventbrite, we're able to see their addresses, and they were from multiple towns around the area. And so a lot of people, I think, are discovering the neighborhood through this event, and we thought it was a wonderfully positive experience with no incidents. I'm not aware of any shortening of the route that John mentioned.
You guys can discuss that.
Yeah, the way we were proposing the event is exactly as last year, mapped out as last year, starting just east of Mason. That Mason Ave works really well as an outlet for all in the Island Park community, and no challenges experienced. I think keeping it the same works well.
Okay. So I think we had a motion and a second, so right? Get a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
you
passes
then.
5-0. We'll
Thank you
see.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the council would direct our town clerk to do whatever she can tomorrow, she could sign it just so I can get it up to Steve Pristower at DOT to see that DOT.
But just ask her very nicely. We don't tell her what to do.
I'm asking
Ask her-
you.
She's right there. Just say, hey, Jen, help me out. Will you help
you.
brother out?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I just want to get it up to Steve right away because we've got, today's 13th, we got 31 days.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item number 5, I move that we approve the memorandum of agreement as presented.
Second.
Okay. Just, Mr. Fitzmaurice? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court. I have a couple of questions and maybe an observation. Understand, and I've read the documents, not page for page, but attachment number 2, which is the firefighters contract, which is labeled as restated and amended. And I believe when I read it, I could see changes in the costs. Is that correct?
Are we gonna? Lisa?
Yeah, the chief can walk you through that, or Lisa can walk you through that. There are some changes in cost, but there's no net change to the budget. There's no net cost to the town. We created, if you remember, in the budget cycle, we created the 4 battalion chief positions, and then we're creating an admin position. But Lisa, or Chief, if you could walk him through it so we understand.
So I did note that one of the positions was deleted, so
That the only question? You wanna
I.
hit me with everything or one at a time?
That's the main question.
Okay. So this change in the organization in the department was approved in the budgeting process, went through all of that. This memorandum is actually before you because it was such a change to the contract that it needed to have union ratification and council approval. But we're not changing anything after July in the budget. Everything here was factored in from the get-go.
Well, thank you, Chief Ford. It appears that my issue is the costs, whether the costs have risen, and therefore into whether or not there is a fiscal impact statement, which is required by law. So it doesn't appear, I think the answers I'm getting is that there's no increase in cost.
Correct.
And if that's the case, then I don't think it's necessary to have fiscal impact statement. So that's my understanding. One of the things I would like to recommend, though, is that we send copies of this new agreement to the actuary, GovInvest for the town, so that it starts to get these things and makes changes to the ARC calculations, and so we don't get surprised by some cost increases. Obviously, this would be pro forma in that regard, but it's a good practice, I think, to get into until we can, and I think this needs to be changed. I think changes to the pension should always be done by the council, not in labor agreements. But in this case, we're not changing it. So, but I think it needs to be forwarded to the actuaries so they have full evidence before them when they calculate the ARC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. No further questions for the chief? So we had a motion.
I believe I made a
Yep,
motion
and
it
a
was seconded
second.
by Mr. Hamilton.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Mr.
Next, yeah,
Mr. President, I move that we approve of the request for the map preservation as made by the town clerk.
Second.
Question.
sure.
Jen, Ms. West, may I just suggest, I know you have access to them in the building, and we have a town historian, whether they be consulted as to the, path that you were going with this restoration of the map. I did reach out to Jim Garman, and I know I'm on the board of the Historical Society, which is why I'm raising this concern. And Rich Talipsky as well as a board member. And I just would think that the expertise of the board as well as Jim Garman might help you just decide whether your plan is the best for this restoration, et cetera. And just if I could just.
Yep, no, I have, I had reached out to the state archivist.
Yep.
With regards to that, and I had also talked to a number of different restoration, whether or not they could do it. I checked with people in New York, in Connecticut and Maryland. Ours was too big of a project for them. And which is why we went with, I chose who we chose.
Sure.
Because they do they did the state restoration on the state's Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and a number of other projects.
Right. No, they definitely have the credentials. If I may, is it a flag that was recently donated to the town?
No, it's a map that we've had.
Map, excuse me.
It's a map that we've had and it's been crumbling.
Okay. I only asked because I went through this dissertation for somebody that wanted donate 3 old maps to the society. And as a comparison, Mr. Garman has the same exact map. And his comments to me were, I'm going to be donating it in the near future. So just throw those comments out to what they're worth, but it sounds like you've done your homework, and I'll support this.
Right, so we had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item is request council approval for the reevaluation of real property services effective December 31st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, it's a request to council approval for actual services provided by GovInvest to the Portsmouth by GovInvest. It's really to the Portsmouth Pension Investment Committee.
So moved.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item is possible solution to reestablish the 4.8 acre Menzie parcel located at the high school as a land and water conservation fund compliant property.
Mr. President, I'm going to move approval. I would love to talk to you about this because it's I went to the high school, as did Keith and David and Kevin.
I did go there.
So
Sorry.
the only outsider is Mark. But where are we talking about? Are we talking about the area before the big old barn? That's still back there, isn't it?
I thought you were just gonna prove that you were going down the whole,
We're right down that rabbit hole.
knew it.
That's all.
Let's go back in time a little bit, and I won't make this super long, but back in 1968,
Good year.
were you born that year? Back in 1968, the town of Portsmouth did this wonderful thing and purchased almost 5 acres of property just to the west of what's now the Portsmouth High School and south of Fort Butts, which is called the Menzie property. It was
Probably the town solicitor at the time.
I don't know, I wasn't born then, and I'm not gonna go guessing who that was, but the town purchased almost 5 acres of what is now the Menzie property with land and water conservation funds through Rhode Island DEM. And it was purposely for the informal play areas and for 4-H horse shows. It is still basically open space. I think maybe the football team practices there. But it is now also where the wind turbine is. So the land was specifically stipulated that the land be dedicated to public outdoor recreation in perpetuity. Unfortunately, the dedication of this land was not recorded in land evidence and subsequently violated by the town when we installed the wind turbine. So fast forward to earlier this year when I got this almost bad boy letter from DEM saying that you are one of 10 towns that does not have a conforming land and water conservation fund property going on, and you must resolve it. So I have been working with DEM to try and figure out how to rectify it. So we could do one of three different things, which is to reestablish the Menzie property, which would mean taking down the turbine, which probably not a good idea. We could purchase a parcel somewhere else in town that would be of comparable size to the Menzie property, which is about 5 acres. That wouldn't financially be possible. Or we could look just north of to the Fort Butts property and see if DEM would consider us using that as a land and water conservation fund property, since we already own it as town property. So we're working with DEM to ask them if they would consider that as being a land and water conservation fund property. So that's what we're doing. Technically, it's just paperwork. Nothing on the ground will change. Nothing will look different. DEM is absolutely entertaining the idea. Right now, I just need to have a public open meeting for you to hear the idea, for the public to ask questions, comments, love the idea, hate the idea. There's also the aspect now DEM requires that there be a requirement that the conversation requests any concerns regarding environmental justice, meaning that there be public engagement about that. We don't have any environmental justice areas in town. There's Newport and Middletown that have specific designated areas. We don't. So this is my time to explain to you this situation that we're in, to rectify it so we're no longer one of those 10 communities that has this problem. And that's basically it in a nutshell. Dr. Ryan.
How would this, if this designation were changed for the area around the Butts Hill Fort, how would that affect the restoration efforts of the Butts Hill Fort Committee?
It will not affect it at all. It is really rectifying what is currently a land and conservation area of Menzie property, and we're basically transferring it from the Menzie property to the Fort Butts property.
Okay. So they're not going to have to like run things by DEM or anything?
No.
Because they, okay.
And does this constitute the meeting that you needed?
Excuse me?
Does this constitute the meeting that you needed for us to approve?
Yes. I would
Okay.
love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear you say this is a meaningful public engagement. There's no environmental justice issues that we have here. Because tomorrow morning, I'm going to write a letter to DEM saying everything that you said.
I want to be clear on this, that this is something that is meaningful, is important for the environmental justice of the entire world, is something that the town should have taken care of years ago. You can fluff it up a little bit, but that's what I'm saying. And I will put that in a motion to approve the request.
Thank you.
Second.
Yeah, and go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I'd like to say it sounds like a really meaningful project. I support it. I think my colleagues do. I have a question about the what's left of the actual barn on the south part of the property. Does DEM ever mention that to you at all?
The barn on the south part of the Menzie property.
I'm assuming it's still there and it was.
I think Clifford.
She may not know where it is.
Yeah.
It had this corrugated asbestos board.
Correct.
Building from the 50s or whatever. That really seems like, I thought this was going to be what this is all about, to be honest with you.
No.
That'll have to be an issue for another day, as you just correctly highlighted. The issue with that barn is the asbestos. So as long as the asbestos is not disturbed, we're good. The minute we try to do something there, we're into all kinds of environmental issues. So this is on our radar. We will be coming to you. I won't say soon, but once we figure out a plan, we are going to have to address that barn.
But it seems like it would be better for our youngsters to get away from that area and move up towards Fort Butts, health wise.
I will tell you, Mr. Rayner, that was one of the places that if you wanted to give a message to the entire B wing, if you had the courage, you would just go on top and write it. And Cliffy, I think, loved Judy at one point.
I think there's some dried paint up there now.
All right. And so I think, obviously, you've got the support of the council, got some direction.
Mhm.
And no, this is something we need to do to correct the
This
situation.
is one step in the process. We have an appraiser that is appraising both the Menzie property and the Fort Butts property to make sure that they're comparable in obviously size, appraised value. And we're getting through this
Right.
one
And
step
you-
at a time.
And just based on the information you were explaining, there's really very few options. It sounds like there's only really allowing us to use Fort Butts potentially as the replacement, because everything else is cost prohibitive. There's restrictions. So really, we have very few options.
There's
So
very few options and I can't think of any other property in town that we could either purchase or is already in existence that we could use for the Menzie property. So Fort Butts seemed to be the natural go-to.
all right.
How about the 3S property? Does that qualify? You look at that now because it's under.
We do have future plans for that. We just need money. And that is a recreation facility in
Glad to hear that.
future years.
My goal is to see something there before,
I know. So
no longer on this earth.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to allow our planner to get us out of trouble. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Next item, it's request to advertise for a public hearing for chapter 405 of the zoning ordinance.
Mr. President, Madam Clerk, what date can you give us?
September 9th.
I would move that we advertise for public hearing for September 9th, the five items that will need attention.
That give you enough time?
I already have the legal ad written.
We've already gone through all of it.
Okay, just checking.
Thanks.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, it's a request to utilize funds from the Emergency Vehicle Apparatus Capital Program in the amount of $171,000 for the purchase of two 2025 Ford Police Interceptor patrol vehicles.
So moved.
Second. So if we are ordering them now, when did you get them, chief? February?
2026.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Good.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And next, it's our public hearing to consider a proposed amendment to the codification of ordinances, chapter 250, motor vehicles and traffic, to add article 11, low-speed vehicles. Chief Peters? All right. Make sure I got my Roman numerals right.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Try to be brief. I know it's the end of the night, but I do have a quick PowerPoint just to kind of bring us up to speed of where we are. So the police department's here tonight to request a prohibition of low-speed vehicles on West Main Road from the Middletown Town Line to West Passage Drive, as well as portions of East Main Road between the Middletown Town Line and Turnpike Avenue. If you go to slide 2, please. I'm just going to provide a brief description of low-speed vehicles regarding the state law. So low-speed vehicle is defined. I just want to clarify, it is not a golf cart. So that's a question that we commonly get. It is not a golf cart. Golf carts will still remain illegal over here in the state of Rhode Island and on the roadways of mainland Portsmouth. So what a low-speed vehicle is it's a four-wheeled motor vehicle, has a gross weight of less than 3,000 pounds. For comparison, a Ford Explorer, 2024 Ford Explorer is greater than 6,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. There's a top speed of greater than 20 miles per hour, but not greater than 25 miles per hour. It must meet several NHTSA standards to be registered, insured, and inspected as part of that process. So the question we get is what makes the difference between the golf cart and the low-speed vehicle? So a low-speed vehicle by NHTSA standards has to have, or I should say the code of federal regulations, has to have headlamps, front and rear turn signal lamps, tail lamps, stop lamps, reflex reflectors, an exterior mirror mounted on the driver's side of the vehicle, and either an exterior mirror mounted on the passenger side or an interior mirror. It has to have a parking brake, a windshield that conforms to motor vehicle safety standards, a VIN, type 1 or type 2 seatbelt assembly. And they also have to comply with rear visibility requirements as well as an alert sound. So that's the difference between what makes it an official low-speed vehicle. A valid driver's license is also required to operate the vehicle. If you go to slide 3, please. So Rhode Island General Law 3119.6-1 was recently passed, and they amended it. There was some clarifying language now that is the reason why we had to delay this initial meeting. But basically now, low-speed vehicles are allowed on the roadways. However, they are prohibited from operation on roadways with a speed limit of more than 35 miles per hour. They are subject to traffic laws. However, they may cross a public highway at an intersection with a posted speed limit between 35 miles per hour and 45 miles per hour, provided that they must be crossing to a secondary street of less than or equal to 35 miles per hour, and the intersection must be controlled by a traffic signal or a stop sign. If we go to slide 4. So why I'm here tonight is municipalities may by ordinance prohibit the operation of low-speed vehicles when found that its use does one of the following. So represents an unreasonable risk of death or serious injury to occupants of low-speed vehicles as a result of general traffic conditions, which shall include but not limited to the following. So the first one is excessive speed of other vehicles. So based on our roadway safety assessments that were done, the 85th percentile of both roadways is in the 40s, 40 miles per hour. So it is above the posted speed limits of 35, unfortunately. Second one is traffic volumes. Based on those roadway assessments, traffic volumes on West Main Road in 2021 were established as 18,700 vehicles per day. And based on East Main Road, our 2020 roadway safety assessment, it was 24,800 vehicles per day. The next category is use of the highway by heavy trucks or other large vehicles. As we'll see every single day, there's tractor trailers that travel on the roadway. In the police department's opinion, low-speed vehicles weren't designed to be driving next to tractor trailers. They were meant to be on one-lane roadways that we have in the state. Final one is ORF has established that the speed limit of the highway increases above 35 miles per hour beyond the point where a low-speed vehicle could safely exit the highway. Not to be excluded from this conversation and discussion is the maximum speed at which low-speed vehicles can travel is 25 miles per hour. The police department believes that the safest place for any vehicle to be when they're traveling is in their lane of travel. And our concern is that when people are traveling behind a low-speed vehicle on East Main Road, they're not going to want to maintain a speed limit of less than 25 miles per hour, and they're going to do whatever they can do to switch lanes. In the police department's opinion, that's a crucial point of where traffic crashes occur. If we can go to slide 6, just has the type of roadways. I know there was a question earlier in regards to this applies, so that just has the categories under Rhode Island General Law. However, we can go to slide number 7. So when the police department first proposed the draft ordinance a few months ago, this is what was posted on the agenda. This was a ban of low-speed vehicles on the entirety of West Main Road, as well as East Main Road between the Middletown Town Line and Turnpike Avenue. So these are the roadways that consist of double lanes, which the police department believes are at risk for crashes and issues. Slide 8 reflects that initial draft that we had. If we go on to slide 9, however, so after that meeting, when we initially requested to advertise for a public hearing, I did speak with residents as well as their concerns and interests in getting these vehicles allowed on the roadways in Portsmouth. So based on that conversation, the police department also developed an alternative option, which is slide 10, for the council to consider, which would still prohibit low-speed vehicles on West Main Road in its entirety. but allow low-speed vehicles on East Main Road between Turnpike Avenue and Headley, as well as a section of East Main Road between Sandy Point Avenue and Union Street. And so you can see that those two green sections on the map. So this alternative option would allow low-speed vehicles to travel the length of Portsmouth. So someone coming from the north end of Portsmouth, if they were coming from Bristol and coming across the bridge, they could find their way. They could come up the hill on East Main Road. Then they'd have to go down Headley Street, cut into Headley Street, go up down Middle. They could go up at Middle, and then there'd be a traffic light at Union Street where they could go out, traverse shortly, but at least there's traffic lights, and then they could go on Sandy Point and then down Sandy Point, and then they could go Wapping and go the other back roads into Middletown so they could actually traverse the area. So that was the second alternative option. If you go to slide 11, that does show the draft alternative language. So to kind of close, the police department respectfully requests the use of low-speed vehicles on West Main Road between the Middletown Town Line and West Passage Drive, as well as East Main Road from the Middletown Town Line to Sandy Point Avenue, and on East Main Road from Union Street to Headley Street be prohibited. So we do have I know there's questions that are brought up about the safety of low-speed vehicles. I think it is a minute 44 video if you wanted to watch that about Consumer Reports, but if not, I do request the approval of this draft ordinance.
I move to approve, and thank you, Chief, for compromising on those two small sections, but I think we do need to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't cause issues, because as we all know, 35 is just a mere suggestion on East Main Road.
Right. So Chief,
I'm
did
gonna
Middletown
second the
allow?
motion, but but I do, a friend of mine was looking at me, he said, so we're gonna prohibit the only cars that are probably driving the speed limit? But anyway, one, I would actually, I'm looking to do the one that has the option to go down Sandy Point. Okay. So one, I addressed the chief with a issue about trying to get to, for want of a better word, Fieldstones and the Green Grocer. But you can probably get there if you go up,
You could be adventurous and take a right out of Union Street, go down to Glen Road and take a left into Linden Lane, down through the barns, out through the Glen, up Glen Road and across the street at the light.
well, actually, you can still do that, although there is a problem somewhere in the middle there about Vanderbilt Lane. But the other way is, yeah, you can go up and get almost anywhere in the town, going down Middle Road to Headley, and then you get on to East Main Road. So most of the businesses in town, I think we'll still be able to get vehicles that are occupied primarily by low speed, people who are using that. So I think it's a good compromise. I don't know that I share your concerns about it, but you're the chief of police and I ain't. So I will certainly defer to you on that matter, and let's keep track. I mean, if there's a problem, you come back and tell us there's a problem. If there's not a problem, hopefully you would tell us that, and maybe we could address it in the future. But certainly this is a proactive chance to make sure that we deal with people. And again, I would anticipate that the signage will be available and put out, and that the people in the department would understand that perhaps the first time they see somebody, they might not need necessarily to ticket them. But that's up to the police, not up to me.
Absolutely. I do have an example of the signage. DPW director was able to get a mock-up of it. It's just gonna be a simple sign that goes up on in the locations once it's established.
I think that's the bigger challenge is the signage, and because folks are not gonna know. And I think that's the education process is gonna be the
Absolutely.
challenge.
We will focus on education.
So as things stand right now, Middletown allows these vehicles on East and West Main Road in Middletown?
That's my understanding. I don't believe there's been any changes.
I will say two things about that. One is if you could actually somewhere put a picture of the type of vehicle, I have no idea if that's, but West Main Road and East Main Road in Middletown, highly congested, don't really, I think, pick up the type of speed we normally anticipate in Portsmouth. But certainly
and
I
go
think it
most
would
of
be
the
worth
day.
them finding out.
You know, as things stand right now, some of these vehicles coming up East Main Road in Middletown could go onto Oliphant, from there to Jepson, from there to Union, from there to Middle Road, and go all the way to the town hall without having to set foot on, or wheel on East or West Main Road in Portsmouth. So,
Kind of like the Flintstones, they set foot on it.
right, exactly. And they can even go on to Headley from there. But yeah, they are kind of stuck at that point. They can't go further.
No, I do think the chief took care of, as much as possible, West Main Road was a big problem, but as much as problem, the east side of the island is accessible with these vehicles.
So, oh, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Guzman. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask whether there's any state requirements for daytime lighting on these units or flashers or any,
They have to have headlamps and tail lamps.
but you don't have to have them operating when you're using the vehicle. No
There-
requirements.
Nope, those are the requirements of low speed vehicles. That's what separates it from
Okay,
golf
so when
cart.
you're
non-
driving, you will have your flashers
Absolutely.
on and your lights on.
I don't believe flashes are required because it's just like a regular vehicle. It would have tail lamps and it would have headlamps.
But I'm saying, you're saying all the vehicles have the lights, but do you have to have them on when you're using the vehicle to notify others that?
I think what Councilman Gleason is pointing out is these things are tiny.
Well, I
And
think you mentioned the Flintstones cars. I think there's gonna be a lot of attention when people see them. First off, and people are gonna go around them, and
Right.
the more visibility would be,
and
but
big truck
I don't,
will be looking right over them and not even seeing them.
I don't know of any regulations for the flashers to be on but it's just that just a regular vehicle. So I don't know if some may have daytime running lights, some may not. So it's all what the standard, but I don't believe it's a requirement. That's why some of those safety standards have us concerned because there's no airbags, there's no crumple zones, there's no crash protection in these vehicles.
Yeah.
I will say in terms of it, I have spoken to Representative McGaw, who I guess was involved with this. And she corrected me on any number of things, but she feels they're going to be at least very visible and not much of a problem. I told her that we would probably have to work on it. But apparently the legislature did do a lot of work. Whether it's satisfactory work, another issue.
So this is a public hearing, so we're taking comments, but I think from the council's perspective, we're kind of leaning towards the draft B version.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Just so we got some direction. So it is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak.
Yeah, if chief signs off on it, I'm comfortable with it.
I mean, I have greater concerns of somebody going down Wapping Road with one of these and somebody going flying past them going 35.
Yeah.
I mean, they already go 35 down Wapping Road anyways, or Sandy Point. But I think this is gonna be a wait and see what happens.
Right.
Somebody online.
There's somebody on.
So we have someone online. Is it Mr. Johnson? Okay. Mr. Johnson? Yeah.
An observation that if you have from Middletown going north, you have a section where they're allowed, a section where they're not allowed, a section where they're allowed, a section where they're not allowed. I predict that that is not going to work very well. And therefore, I wonder if this is a plan that we should adopt in the form that it is being presented.
Kind of losing you to.
Questioning the
Well,
connectivity.
the problem is that if Middletown doesn't make a change to the ordinance, then somebody can come up East Main Road to essentially, not Oliphant,
Raymond's.
no, well, they can't get to Braman's. No, not Mill Lane.
Well, the other point he
Mitchell's,
raised.
Mitchell's Lane,
Yeah.
they would have to take a right and then they would have to go all the way down
Yeah,
Mitchell's
I
onto
mean,
Wapping.
The point
I
that
mean,
he's
it-
raising too is that in Portsmouth, one of these things is gonna be heading north on East Main Road. There will be a section where they can go, then a section where they can't go, then a section where they can go.
Exactly.
And the possibility of a car that is in the permitted zone suddenly passing Union Street, realizing too late they had to turn. And now they're heading north on a restricted area. And I think, I think the speaker was quite right. That's very highly likely to happen.
Oh, it's absolutely gonna happen, but I mean, You're gonna have to cross that bridge and come to it, and that person's gonna have to learn that they.
I'd also like to
Correct.
point out that I think the chief has done a very good job of obtaining those areas that you can navigate around. And so it is something that the government said you have to use, and we're having a way to do it that I think is the least, harmful, if you will, to businesses within the community. And people will have to, learn. And I will say that locals might have an advantage because we know all these back roads, but I think it's good to at least try it.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
I
Opposed? Okay, motion
I believe
passes.
the motion to approve has already been made by Mr. Hamilton, seconded by myself.
Yes.
Thank you.
On
B.
B.
Option B.
Yep. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on draft B. All those in favor?
Aye.
I guess.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay.
Motion to receive all correspondence and place it on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. And then future meetings, August 26th, September 9th, and September 23rd are our next scheduled council meetings.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. So we'll see everyone on the 20th.